Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most foundational stories in the history of tech. And it's a story that doesn't start with silicon and electricity, but with steam, with gears, and with a mind that could genuinely see the future. So let's just start with a simple question. If I asked you to name the person who wrote the very first computer program, who would you think of? Probably someone from, the 1940s or 50s, right? Surrounded by those giant room-sized computers? Well, the real answer is so much more surprising and way, way earlier than that. You're not going to believe this, but we have to go all the way back to the 1840s. That's right. The first computer program was put down on paper over 100 years before the first electronic computers were even a thing. And that, of course, begs the question, who on earth had the vision to write a program for a machine that didn't even exist yet? The person behind it all was Augusta Ada King, the Countess of Lovelace, but today we just know her as Ada Lovelace. And her story, well, it's this incredible mix of poetry, high-level mathematics, and just unbelievable foresight. To really get who Ada was, you first have to understand the two worlds she came from. I mean, she was literally the product of two powerful and powerfully opposed forces in her life. And the contrast between her parents it's just stark. On one side, you've got her dad, the famous, wild, romantic poet Lord Byron. He left England when she was just a baby and died when she was only 8. And on the other side, you have her mother, Lady Byron. Lord Byron himself actually nicknamed her the Princess of Parallelograms because she was so into math. And she was absolutely terrified Ada would grow up to be a poet like her father, so she pushed this super strict education in mathematics on her as a kind of antidote. And the pressure she was under was just immense. Her mother demanded intense, rigorous study, sometimes even using punishments like solitary confinement. This quote, it's from a young Ada. It's a forced apology she had to write for not doing well enough in her lessons. It just gives you a glimpse into this childhood that was relentlessly shaped by logic and order. But that disciplined mind, forged in all that logic and all those numbers, was about to find its perfect match. And not in a person, but in a totally revolutionary new invention. So picture this. The year is 1833. Ada is 17 years old. She's at a party, and she meets the brilliant, kind of eccentric inventor, Charles Babbage. Just 2 weeks later, she and her mother go to his workshop to see his amazing creation, this complex mechanical calculator he called the difference engine. And this wasn't just some polite, casual curiosity. While most people there just saw a complicated jumble of gears, Ada saw something more. A friend who was there wrote that even as young as she was, Ada immediately got how it worked. She didn't just understand the mechanics, she saw, and these are the words used, the great beauty of the invention. This was the moment that spark was lit. Now that spark would take about 10 years to really ignite, but when it did, it led to her most important work. And it all started, believe it or not, with a simple translation job. So here's how it all went down. In 1843, Ada was asked to translate an article written by an Italian engineer about Babbage's new, much more ambitious machine, the analytical engine. Babbage, who knew just how smart she was, asked her a really simple question. Why just translate it? He suggested she add her own original notes to the paper, an idea she, quote, immediately adopted. And calling them notes is maybe the understatement of the century. Her additions, her notes, ended up being 3 times longer than the original article she was translating. This wasn't just commentary. This was a completely new, profound piece of work in its own right. And inside these notes, she did some truly incredible things. She laid out, in detail, how the engine could be programmed with punched cards. Then, she actually wrote out a step-by-step algorithm to calculate something called Bernoulli numbers. This is what we now consider the world's first ever computer program. She even found and corrected a grave mistake in Babbage's own calculations. But her biggest contribution, that went even deeper. Because, you see, Ada Lovelace didn't just see a better calculator. She saw a machine that had the potential to absolutely transform the world. And this is where you can almost feel that poetic side of her, inherited from her father, shining through. She used this brilliant metaphor to explain what the machine could do. She compared the analytical engine to a jacquard loom, a device that used punched cards to weave super complex patterns, like flowers and leaves, into fabric. She saw that just like the loom weaves patterns, Babbage's engine could weave algebraical patterns. But then she made an even bigger leap, a truly mind-blowing one. She realized that if the machine could manipulate numbers, and if other things, like, say, music, could be represented by numbers and symbols, well, then the machine's potential was basically limitless. She literally wrote that the engine could compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. This is the core idea of all modern computing. The idea that a machine can process any kind of information, images, sound, text, as long as it can be turned into symbols. She saw the potential for digital music, computer graphics, even artificial intelligence, all the way back in 1843. It's an absolutely staggering vision. Now, after an intellectual achievement that huge, you'd expect the rest of her story to be just one triumph after another. But Ada's life took a tragic turn. The same incredible mind that saw the future was soon kind of left without a clear path forward. The years right after her notes were published they were not kind to her. Even though she was celebrated by her friends, she was soon hit with a chronic, debilitating illness. Her brilliant mind, without another huge scientific project to work on, turned to trying to create a mathematical system for betting on horses, which, you can guess, only led to scandals and huge debts. And then in 1852, she died of cancer. She was only 36 years old. So what happened? It seems like it was just this perfect storm of factors. A huge part of it was the lack of a new, big project, and really the absence of a scientific community she could work with. You combine that with her failing health and all the personal and financial problems, and it created this tragic collapse. The ultimate tragedy of Ada Lovelace is that her intellect was, in so many ways, a century ahead of the world. She had a mind that could go toe-to-toe with Charles Babbage, one of the greatest thinkers of the age. But once her massive work on the analytical engine was done, there just wasn't another problem of that scale for her to solve. Which kind of leaves us with this final thought. Was she a tragic genius whose potential was just cut short by illness and circumstance? Or should we remember her as the person who literally wrote the blueprint for our digital world? The very first one to see that a machine of gears and levers could one day learn to weave not just numbers, but music and art and the very fabric of modern life. Maybe the real answer is she was both.